What's up, guys? My name is Jerry, and today we're going to be talking about how the big three of Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Greg Oden would have gave the NBA a lot of trouble. And we're going to jump right into the video. Now, in the late 2000s, the Portland Trail Blazers front office were working some real magic. They were able to put together a young, talented big three in just 2 years. And what's so impressive about it is that they built it through the draft. And it all started on the draft night in 2006. The Trail Blazers did an amazing job. Now, they had the 6th overall pick and the 4th overall pick. They used the 6th overall pick to select the electrifying Brandon Roy, and then they used the 4th pick in the draft to work out a deal with the Chicago Bulls, who ended up selecting LaMarcus Aldridge with that number 2 pick. So the Blazers decided to trade away their number 4 pick with an additional player in order to get LaMarcus Aldridge from the Chicago Bulls. And then we look next year in the 2007 draft, the Portland Trail Blazers had the number 1 overall pick, and they went with Greg Oden, giving them a big three that was filled with talent and filled with potential and upside. Now, the first thing we're going to do is look at all of these guys individually, and we're going to start with Brandon Roy, who is probably one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. We all know how badly injuries derailed his NBA career. It got so bad that he had to retire at the young age of 26. But in the years that he did spend in the NBA, he was a very fun and a very dominant player. And to put into perspective of how good Brandon Roy really was, the great Kobe Bryant said that he was the hardest player he ever had to guard because he had no weaknesses to his offensive game. And then we actually look at Brandon Roy's skill set. He really did have no weaknesses. He was a guy that stood at 6'5", and he could score from every single area on the court. He could knock down that 3 ball off the catch, off the dribble. He had a great handle on the ball. He can score out of all sets, out of the isolation, running without the basketball, coming off the pick and roll. He could get to that mid-range area and pull up. He was so good in the mid-range. And then also, he was athletic. He was bouncy, and then he was great at controlling his body and finishing around the rim. He could finish with the right hand, with the left hand, make acrobatic finishes, finish through contact. He could really do it all on the offensive side of the ball. And even though his career was derailed by injuries, he had a pretty solid NBA career. He made the playoffs. He made the All-Star game 3 times. He did a lot in his short NBA career, and I just wish he could have stayed healthy, because there's no telling how good he could have been. He never got nowhere near his full potential. And then we look at LaMarcus Aldridge. Out of the big three, LaMarcus Aldridge had the most successful and the longest NBA career. He is a 7-time All-Star. He has averaged 20 points per game multiple times in his career, and he's also contributed to a lot of great teams throughout his NBA career. And looking at his skill set, there is so much to love about LaMarcus Aldridge. And if there's a night where your favorite team is playing against him back in his prime, you were probably going to hate him for those 48 minutes, because he is one of those players that are very fundamentally sound in the post. And watching LaMarcus Aldridge over all these years, it feels like he has never missed that post fade. That is his bread and butter. He could shoot it over both shoulders. He could make it with a hand in his face. He could shoot it out the double team if he was on fire. That post fade was just crazy. And then also, he had other moves down in the post. He could hit you with the post spin. He had the drop step, the up and under. He just had some great footwork down there. And then he had the soft touch to balance everything out. And he also knew how to use his size and strength, and he could use that to his advantage at times as well. And then also, he was really good in the pick and roll and the pick and pop. He could knock down the mid-range from just about any spot on the court. And then throughout his career, we've seen him evolve his game as the NBA started to fall in love with the three-point shot. That was something he was able to add to his game. So LaMarcus Aldridge has had a really solid NBA career, and I think he has a great shot at the Hall of Fame, and he definitely has Hall of Fame talent. Now we get to look at Greg Oden, and just like Brandon Roy, he is one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history. His career suffered greatly from dealing with injuries, and he could not keep his knees healthy. And just to put into perspective of how much potential NBA officials thought he had, he was chosen number 1 in the 2007 NBA draft over the great Kevin Durant. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he would have had a better career than KD, but that is just how good people thought he was at the time. Now, there was a lot to love about Greg Oden as an NBA prospect. We can start with his physical profile. He stood at 7 feet tall, 250 pounds, and he already had an NBA-made body. He was very athletic for his size. He was great at running the floor, and he had great leaping ability. And then also what stood out to the most about his game was his defensive prowess. He was great at protecting the rim and blocking shots. He had great timing. He was a very disciplined and calm defender, never really jumped at pump fakes. And then also something that was very rare from a player his size is that he has some lateral quickness to his game. He could step out on the pick and roll help and guard smaller guys. He was able to shuffle his feet. And then also offensively, he was nothing to sneeze at. He had a low post presence. He could finish with brute strength quite often. He was great at setting screens and rolling hard to the rim. He served as a lob threat, and he was just a great finisher around the rim. So there's really no telling how great Greg Oden could have been, but all we do know is that the potential was definitely there, and he excelled at so many different things. Now that we looked at these guys individually, we can now look at them as a big three and the potential that they had together. And the first thing I want to point out, in the few games that they did play together, these guys had a record of 50-12, which is very impressive. When they were out on the court together, these guys could not lose. And looking at their games and skill sets, I think they correspond really well with each other. You had a wing scorer and Brandon Roy, who could score the basketball at a very elite level from all areas of the court. You had a very skilled power forward in LaMarcus Aldridge, who could do so many different things offensively. He could light you up from the mid-range, or he could dominate you in the low post. And then you had an enforcer in Greg Oden, who was going to set the tone on the defensive side of the ball by being that defensive anchor, protecting the rim, blocking shots, and rebounding. And then he also had a presence on the offensive side of the ball. And what makes this big three even more dangerous is the supporting cast that they had. They had two-way role players in Andre Miller and Nicholas Batum. So when they were fully healthy and they threw that starting five out there, it was a very dangerous team. Now we take all of those things into consideration. Now we can talk potential. And when I say potential, I'm talking about championships. And I think if these guys could have stayed healthy, and that's Brandon Roy and Greg Oden, I think this big three could have won at least one NBA championship together. And we look at who their competition would have been at the time, late 2000s, it definitely would have been the Los Angeles Lakers. We saw them go to the finals in 2008, and then they won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. And I think this Trailblazers team would have matched up really well with them. I think they could have matched them in offensive firepower with Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge. They had perimeter defenders and Andre Miller and Nicholas Batum. And then they had shot blocking and rebounding in Greg Oden. And then if they could have gotten past the Lakers, they would have had to face the Orlando Magic and or the Boston Celtics. And I think they match up really well with those teams too. And then we look past that era of the Lakers winning back-to-back titles. After that, the Western Conference were looking for a new team to claim the throne. We saw the Dallas Mavericks go to the finals in 2011. Then we saw OKC in 2012. And for the next 2 years, We saw the San Antonio Spurs go to the finals, and all 4 of those years the Western Conference were facing the Miami Heat. And I also think the Trailblazers would have been very competitive with those teams as well, and I think in one of those years they would have brought home a ring for the Portland Trailblazers. Now it's just very sad to see, especially as an NBA fan, to see 2 players, and Greg Oden and Brandon Roy, who had so much potential, so much upside, just see their careers get ate up by injuries. We'll never know how special they truly could have been. But that's really going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below, let me know what you think, how good this big 3 could have been, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.